of events. So, do we have any citizens or public comments? I don't think Keith has any comments.
Any comments? I don't think so either.
So we'll welcome everybody. Consideration of approval of the agenda, and before we go through that, I have a request from the auditors group to rearrange the schedule. I take it for a variety of reasons, one of which might be the liquid rain and what have you, that we might turn to something else before it's all over with. So the idea would be to move that up to, I take it, the right after business of mayor, between 8 and 9, right?
Oh, if you want to do that, or if you just want to move it up into that section, it doesn't. Whatever would
What
so
section?
please you. So.
Well, we'll make it.
Move it to 10A.
Move it to 10A.
Yeah, move it to 10A.
I'd so move.
Yep.
Second.
Clerk will call the roll.
Starr.
Aye.
Yeager.
Aye.
Friesman.
Aye.
Hammond.
Aye.
Malero.
Aye.
Okay, the agenda as amended is approved. Consideration of approval of the minutes of the January 3 meeting. Discussion or motion?
So move.
Second.
Clerk will call the roll.
Yeager.
Aye.
Friesman.
Aye.
Hammond.
Aye.
Malero.
Aye.
Starr.
Aye.
Minutes of the January 3 meeting are approved. Consideration of approval of the consent calendar. Are there any questions, comments, whatever regarding the consent calendar?
So move. Second.
Clerk will call the roll.
Friesman.
Aye.
Hammond.
Aye.
Malero.
Aye.
Starr.
Aye.
Yeager.
Aye.
Consent calendar is approved as submitted. Business of the mayor, I'm not submitting anything today. Petition, request for CAR for use of city property and closure of streets for car show on July 16, 2017. Discussion.
My name is Jay Sweroff. I'm a member of the Car Association. We are requesting the use of Central Park on Sunday, July 16th from 6 a.m. till about 4 p.m. We also request street closures on 2 blocks of Kelly, 1 block of Blunt, and 2 blocks of North Jackson. This is the 36th annual car show.
This is the same as you had before.
Yes,
so to
sir.
speak.
36 years in a row.
You're not that old.
Still
are
ain't
you?
got it right.
Anything been changed? Any
No.
new additions or whatever?
Mayor.
Cars just keep getting older, huh?
And the guys
so
putting
does
it on
the
keep getting older,
sponsors.
too.
I think it's a great event. I'd so move.
Yeah.
Second.
Clerk will call the roll.
Hammond.
Aye.
Malero.
Aye.
Starr.
Aye.
Yeager.
Aye.
Friesman.
Aye.
The request is approved. And we'll proceed next with the consideration of a motion approving the audit report for the City of Charles City for fiscal year 2015-2016. Discussion.
Hello, everyone. There's not going to be a whole lot of changes from last year, so we'll go ahead and we'll do the condensed version, but I welcome you to give me any questions and concerns that you might have. The first thing I'd like to talk about is the Independent Auditor's Report on page 2. It's on Gardner-Thompson letterhead. And again, this goes ahead and it details out that the city is on the cash basis of accounting, so you're not looking at any long-term debt or capital assets on your financial statements. And it also gives the opinion that we have issued on the city's financial statements for the fiscal year ended June 30, 2016. And again, this year, our firm has issued an unmodified opinion, which is a clean opinion, stating that the financial statements are fairly presented. The next thing that I'd like to look at is on page 5, and this is the management's discussion and analysis. And this is the city's chance to give any further explanation as far as the variance in receipts and disbursements. It kind of highlights the projects that happened during the year for the city. It highlights any debt that was issued. Just kind of gives a general overview of the financial statements. It also explains the financial statements and what the citizen can be expected to see in this report. And that goes on for the next several pages. There's also comparative financial statements in there so that you can compare fiscal 15 to fiscal 16. But the next place that I would like to stop is on page 9 with the debt administration. And I know that's something that the council is always very concerned with. The calculated debt limit for the City of Charles City for this fiscal year was $18,691,051. And at June 30, 2016, the city only had applicable debt of $5,610,702. So right now, the City of Charles City is about 30% of the debt limit, and the recommended max for the last few years has been set at about 65%. So as you can see, you have quite a bit of room there. Any questions or concerns with that? Okay.
Is that pretty common for across the state, or is this?
Yes.
Or is this,
Yep. You are right there with the average.
Yep.
So, and it fluctuates from year to year too, depending on the projects that are completed and the financing for those projects. You know, whether you're going the general obligation funding or if you're using the special assessment way of paying for things too. So, you know, that makes a big difference. It can fluctuate pretty greatly.
Just looking forward, I mean, the interest rates right now are pretty low. They're starting to move upwards, but we've got quite a bit of room if we have more debt to do something that.
Yep.
If you manage debt well, it's not bad, but it might be a good time to look at that to do a well-qualified project.
Right. Right. Okay. The next place that I would like to stop then is on page 11, and that is the start of the financial statements for the city for this fiscal year. And the first one is the cash basis statement of activities and net position, and this shows the city as a whole. This shows both the governmental type activities and the business type activities. And there was just a slight decrease in ending fund balance for this fiscal year, a decrease of $76,000. The ending fund balance is $13,720,147. So a pretty healthy place to be. The financial statements following that on page 13 are the cash basis statement of receipts, disbursements, and changes in cash balance just for the governmental funds. And the first column on page 13 is the general fund. And I want to remind you that after the implementation of GASB statement number 54, that general fund is not just Fund 1 on your financial statements. That includes your general basic fund. It includes the petty cash, the police dispatch, K-9, the police safety education, park and rec, communications equipment, hotel motel, nuisance abatement, police purchase, and the emergency funds. So all of those general ledger funds are contained in that column labeled general on your financial statements. Something I know that you're always interested in is your ending balance as a percentage of disbursements. And this year, the ending balance to disbursement ratio was 46.88%, and that's a slight decrease from last year. Last year was sitting about 48%. Again, this is something that fluctuates depending on what type of year you have and you know how your budget kind of ends out. The recommended max from the state auditor's office in the past years has been, you know, right around 25 to 30%, but that's very lenient too because they understand that, you know, sometimes budget years are tough and unexpected changes come. Sometimes insurance hikes kind of hit you unexpectedly. So having a healthy general fund balance is, you know, important also. So if you do have those expenses, you know, you're prepared and don't have to go into debt to fulfill those obligations. Any questions or concerns with that?
I guess the one thing I'd like to make note of is that when you talk about all those other funds that are included in the general fund, that anyone else looking at these statements has to remember that as well, because that money's pretty well got a home already and someone's got an intended use for it. So
it does. It does.
The city doesn't have that just to do whatever they want to with it.
Exactly. And as you're going through your budget meetings, you know, that's something to bring up because, a lot of the general public doesn't understand GASB statement number 54 and how everything needs to work. So, they just need to keep in mind that, of that $2 million fund balance, only $1.8 million of that is actual general basic fund. So it's a significant amount that's in those other funds. Any other questions or concerns with that? Okay, the statements that follow that then, we have the statement of cash receipts, disbursements, and changes in cash balances for the proprietary funds on page 16 and 17. And there weren't, anything out of the ordinary, unexpected in those financial statements. They were pretty true to what Trudy had been presenting throughout the fiscal year. So, not really any big surprises there. On page 19, we start the notes to the financial statements, and the notes just go into greater detail about the information presented in the financial statements. It talks more about the cash basis of accounting, and it also gives additional information about your debt that you have outstanding, and about the policies and procedures in place for your pension fund. It also gives detail about the notes and the bonds that are outstanding. It also gives detail about the IPERS pension liability and also detail about the transfers, and then any other construction commitments. We did implement a new GASB standard for this fiscal year, GASB statement number 72. It just adds more disclosures about the fair value measurement of your cash and investments, but the city only has, the cash, and they don't have any investments in derivatives or anything like that. So it really didn't change any of the report. The next place I'd like to stop is page 38, and that is the budgetary comparison schedule for receipts and disbursements. And looking at the disbursement side, you're always looking to make sure that the final to total variance is positive, and at the end of the fiscal year it was. So no red flags jumping out there. And then with the final to total variance on the receipt side of it, again, no large red flags, just because the city's policy is to really focus on those disbursements, and departments don't always know if they're going to have a change in their grant funding, or if a change is going to come down, and they don't always remember to include that in their budget. So I guess our main focus is looking at that disbursement side, and as long as that's looking good, then we don't get too worried about what the receipt side looks at. The next place I'd like to stop is on page 45, and that has the detail of the non-major governmental funds. And the only thing I really want to hit on this is the balances in the TIF funds. The Southwest Bypass TIF fund has an ending balance of over $1 million. And as that TIF progresses, that's something to kind of be keeping an eye on. And we do have 2 TIF reconciliations that were in the negative, which I'll talk about when we get back to the findings too. But moving forward, just as those TIFs are coming to an end, making sure that those balances are being spent for what they're intended to be spent for.
Could you expand a little bit on your thoughts on the Southwest Bypass TIF?
Normally, the way the TIFs are supposed to work, you have an obligation that you have certified that obligation to the county auditor's office, and then they know how much tax to collect and remit to the city. So it's unusual to have a balance this size sitting out there, okay. Because normally, and this goes back to pre-Steve, this is Jody and Tom,
right,
where this balance kind of got built up. And I know that Trudy and Steve have kind of been going back through the TIF, trying to rework and trying to see, where this happened and why this happened. But generally, you have a TIF account that just is a pass-through. The debt's been certified, and you're just making a payment. So you collect those TIF dollars, and then you turn right around and pay that bond principal and interest. So, normally you don't see the balances sitting here like that.
I think there were some changes in the TIF regulations, yes, also that came along,
yep,
that changed some of that.
And it also, the reporting process changed too. So.
Right. And this is pretty much on a glide path to pretty much pay out as our obligations.
Exactly.
So we're trying to manage that quite closely.
By the end of 18, I think Southwest is going to be closer to like $340,000.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
Right.
And that's, like I said, just something to bring your attention to, just so that you're aware of it. And as that project progresses, or the obligation is getting paid off, just something to be watching for. The next place I would like to stop is on page 59, and that is the schedule of expenditures of federal awards. And this year, the uniform guidance was issued, which governs how we treat federal expenditures. In past years, the threshold for having a single audit has been $500,000. For this fiscal year, it moved up to $750,000, but as you can see, the city still spends way over that dollar amount for federal dollars. So this year we had a single audit, and Heidi's Section 8 Housing Choice Vouchers were the major program for that, so they got an extra close look with that. So, and there's a lot of changes to the reporting that goes along with that. Trudy's going to be filling out the federal audit clearinghouse data collection form in the next couple of days, and they've made some significant changes to that and a lot more paperwork, so a lot more information provided. On page 61 is another sheet of Gardner-Thompson letterhead, and this is our independent auditor's report on internal control. And as part of the audit, we obtain an understanding of the internal control in place. We don't issue an opinion on that. It's just to help us plan our tests and our samples based on the internal control that's in place for the city. So that letter just goes ahead and explains that. The next letter that we have is on page 63, and that's the independent auditor's report on compliance for each of the major federal programs. And this just goes through what our responsibility is as auditors looking at the internal control over those specific financial or those major programs. And then on page 65, we start the schedule of findings and question costs. Segregation of duties. We have every year.
Every year.
That should
So-
just be in stone.
It should be chiseled in stone.
We need 20 more people.
Yeah.
Yep, you need 20 more people doing 20 more different
The
jobs.
accounting firm's going to pay for it.
Yeah. So again, it's just, in there as a reminder for the council to stay involved and, really make sure that cross-training is happening so that if someone has to be gone, those duties are being performed by another employee, which, I think the city's been doing a really good job with that. So you're doing what you can. The next comment on page 66 is preparation of full disclosure financial statements. And again, same as last year, you don't have a CPA on staff that goes ahead and can prepare this book with all the required external disclosures. So because we assist with that, I'm required to put this finding in the report. Page 67 is the statutory findings. We had a budget finding. The budget was overexpended during the year. But the budget was subsequently amended, and so at the end of the year, the disbursements were not over the amounts budgeted. But because it was over in the middle of the year, I'm required to put that finding in there. With the business transactions, again, we had some related party transactions. The threshold for being a potential conflict of interest is $1,500, and we had 2 that were over that, but because these city employees don't participate in the acquisition of those services, this is just a transparency disclosure. There's no finding associated with that. On page 68, we have a finding about excess fund balance. And again, this is something that we compare the ending balance to the disbursements during the year. And if there's a fund where the ending balance is greater than the disbursements for the year, then they get included in this particular finding. And it might because you issued debt or received grant proceeds before a project was able to be completed. So in a lot of these instances, it's just a timing thing. With the TIF funds, the way that it had been done in the past, and it's being paid down now because these TIF funds are included in that also. So any governmental fund that had ending balance that was less than what the disbursements were, or greater than the disbursements, is included in that. On page 69, we have a financial position finding, and that is any project or any fund that has a deficit fund balance at the end of the year gets included in that. And a lot of the times that's because those capital projects have made those expenditures and they're just waiting for a reimbursement from the state for a grant. So, and that's the case here, where the projects have had expenditures and you're just waiting for the related revenues to come in. And then the last one is the tax increment financing, and again, we kind of touched on that a little bit, where the county performs a TIF obligation reconciliation at the end of every year to compare what was certified to what has been received by the city. And I know Trudy and Steve have been working with Gloria and Sandy to go ahead and get this rectified. So, it's kind of a work in process. So, and that's all that I have for findings. So does anyone have any questions or concerns?
I think, to me anyway, an important part of this is the bond level that we're at and where we're at. And we have a lot of, we're pretty low in our percentage of bonding for what's acceptable. So I think as we economically start feeling the rates starting to rise, that if we have worthwhile projects, it may be a time to look at some limited bonding for such projects if it's acceptable. So I think we've been laying in this low level for several years now, and then now we may see it starting to rise. So I think, just for our information, that's important. The other thing that I think is important is, from the council, I think congratulations to you for making partner with
Thank you.
with Gardner and Thompson. We appreciate your services. I know I've talked with Trudy, and we work very well together, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity, so thank you.
Other questions, discussion regarding the audit? Or in the alternative, is there a motion to approve the audit?
So move. Second.
Take your pick.
Oh, my God.
Either or.
Any other discussion? Clerk will call the roll.
Malero. Aye. Starr. Yeager.
Aye.
Friesman.
Aye.
Hammond.
Aye.
The audit is approved.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Go.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
Consideration Resolution 1-17, accepting the SCT/NCT/Morningside Site Improvements Project. Discussion.
Hi, I'm Heidi Nielsen, the Housing Director. The site improvement project consists of the addition of new handrails and replacement of some of the existing handrails at all three sites, North Cedar Terrace, South Cedar Terrace, and Morningside Apartments. The project was awarded to King Construction for $149,750. Throughout the project, there were 2 change orders that were previously approved for additional handrails that were omitted from the original plans, some tiling and drainage work, and additional fill and sod related to that extra work. The change orders were for $7,846.25 and $19,322.50 for a total project cost of $176,918.75. The project funds were budgeted and paid out of the 2015-16 capital fund grants. There was a final inspection done on the project on December 7th. We had a representative from Wagner and Weiniger there. We did retain them to help us with the project. And everything was done and completed in an acceptable fashion. All the Davis-Bacon and other HUD reporting requirements have been met. So we are requesting the approval of Resolution 1-17 to accept the project as complete.
Questions or discussion?
Everything, in your opinion, is satisfactory, Heidi?
Yep.
Your maintenance people, everything's good to go?
Yep.
Okay. I'd so move then.
Second.
Any other discussion? Clerk will call the roll.
Starr.
Aye.
Yeager.
Aye.
Friesman.
Aye.
Hammond.
Aye.
Malero.
Okay, Resolution 1-17 is approved. Consideration of a first reading of ordinance 1099, amending Chapter 27, the code pertaining to Public Housing Board. Discussion.
Yeah, we have updates to the Housing and Redevelopment Authority Board of Commissioners to match the changes that we're looking to make with the procurement policy with the Housing Board. Heidi's been looking to get an updated procurement policy that better meets the needs of what HUD requires. And so I know Ralph Smith has been working for several months trying to take the existing city policy and the HUD policies to kind of mesh them to come up with one procurement policy that would work well, and it just proved to be unable to really do that. So what we've done is we've taken that HUD template for procurement policy, and we've massaged that to kind of maybe fit more into our needs. I think typically on the federal side, HUD is used to working with independent housing authorities that have more powers of their own, whereas ours is overseen by the city. So we kind of work that together. And what you see before you are some changes that give the board and Heidi a little bit more autonomy within the procurement process. And basically the changes reflect that. You'll note in there that the Housing and Development Authority does not constitute an independent municipal housing agency. They're still a department of the city, so that's still where they fall. The executive director, which is Heidi, will have the authorization to sign contracts and agreements, whereas before either myself or the mayor would have to sign those. This is good in that it does give Heidi a little bit more autonomy for basic day-to-day operations, but it still keeps the city as the overall factor in overseeing the department. I still retain the authority to hire and fire. The main parts of the procurement policy that are changing are really kind of the step levels of what can be spent, and anything from $0 to $5,000, Heidi would have the ability to make those decisions. $5,000 to $10,000, Heidi would need the recommendation from their board. Anything above 10, the board would recommend and city council would need to approve. So in a lot of ways, that's exactly what we do here with the rest of city operations. So that fits in nicely, and I think it'll just be a smoother process altogether. So basically, that's the changes we're looking at here with this first reading of the ordinance to match up to the procurement policy we're looking to approve. I think that's about it.
Questions or discussion?
Does this have to be reviewed by HUD or anything for their input approval?
We will, yeah. We'll send this, and that was part of the concern as well, as we didn't want to change what they had too much so that they wouldn't accept it. Mm-hmm. So we will, I assume once we approve this, we'll send it into HUD and get their feedback, and I think we're fairly confident that they'll approve it, but I guess we don't know till we do.
Sure.
And my understanding is that the actual procurement policy is supplied by HUD, is that correct? Or
okay, and so that's pretty much we're in a compliance or agreement with what they're...
Rather than trying to take our existing procurement policy, which is actually unnecessarily thick, and morphing it to match their needs, we took their policy and worked it backwards. So okay. We figured they would find it more acceptable that way. And our city procurement policy is next on the block to be reviewed, and so that's something we're working on right now. So that will be updated to be a more usable version, actually.
Okay. I'd so move for approval.
Any other discussion? Clerk will call the roll.
Yeager.
Aye.
Friesman.
Aye.
Hammond.
Aye.
Malero.
Aye.
Starr.
Aye.
Okay, the first reading is approved, and we'll have the first reading.
Ordinance number 1099, an ordinance repealing Chapter 27 of the Charles City Code of Ordinances and adopting a new Chapter 27, which amends the provisions of the repealed chapter by providing that the City Council of Charles City, Iowa, shall exercise all powers conferred by Chapter 403A of the Code of Iowa through the Charles City Housing Development Authority Board of Commissioners and its Executive Director, subject to the jurisdiction of the City Council and supervision of the City Administrator.
Thank you. Next up, consideration of the first reading of Ordinance 1098, amending Chapter 105.06 pertaining to yard waste. Discussion.
Yes, Your Honor, we discussed this briefly at our last planning session. 105.06 hadn't been changed in a number of years, so essentially all we did is make revisions so that it reflects the current practice of the city, including that people are required to either take yard waste to the Shaw Avenue compost site or compost the yard waste on site. And we did include some provisions that the city may from time to time publish notice of curbside pickup of leaves and brush. Excuse me.
This kind of goes back to when we changed the burning laws, doesn't it, a few years
Correct,
ago?
yeah, the old 10506 had a provision that allowed people to burn leaves on site, which we have prohibited.
Along with other yard waste, right?
Correct.
Further discussion or questions?
I'd so move.
Second.
Clerk will call the roll.
Friesman.
Aye.
Hammond.
Aye.
Valero.
Aye.
Star.
Aye.
Yeager.
Okay, the first reading of ordinance 1098 is approved, and we'll have that now.
Ordinance number 1098, an ordinance amending section 105.06 of the Charles City Code of Ordinances for the purpose of modifying the requirements for the disposal of yard waste.
Thank you. Consideration of resolution 02-17, adopting procurement policy for Charles City Housing Authority. Discussion.
We already talked about this a little bit, but this is the procurement policy to go along with the change in the ordinance for the housing department. Something else I guess I didn't mention was, we put in similar purchasing restrictions, bid requirements for small purchases in various size that's similar to the city. So, there's a level of when you go to get quotes, and then once you get above $150,000, then you're doing sealed bids, and so that matches what the current state requirement is for that bid threshold. And so we've reflected a lot of those amounts within this procurement policy. But a lot of the rest of it is stock HUD policy. If there's anything specific that is in there that's changed that really stood out, I guess those are the main points.
But we're still going to be fairly consistent citywide as far as how this is going to work.
Yes.
Okay.
Further discussion.
So move, Your Honor.
Second. Clerk will call the roll.
Hammond.
Aye.
Valero.
Aye.
Star.
Aye.
Yeager.
Aye.
Friesman.
Aye.
Resolution 02-17 is approved. Consideration of Resolution 3-17, approving preliminary plans and setting public hearing for 2017 sanitary sewer lining project. Discussion.
Well, this resolution approves preliminary plans and specifications for the 2017 sanitary sewer lining project. It also sets February 16th as the letting date and February 21st as the date of the public hearing. The 2017 sanitary sewer lining project, this is a continuation of an ongoing program that we have to rebuild sanitary sewer lines in place without excavation to limit inflow and infiltration into the sewer system. The city has successfully utilized this process for quite a few years now. We rehabilitate sanitary sewer mains by basically inserting a new line within the existing line, and we end up with a continuous line without joints. Now, this year's project will involve lining approximately 5,400 lineal feet, and this will all be located in the northeast area of town, basically between D Street and Cleveland Avenue, all north of 13th Avenue. So we'd recommend approval of Resolution 317, setting the letting and hearing dates and authorizing the clerk to publish the public notice.
Discussion.
About how much of the community have we done, John?
Well, I know going on how much we've been doing about every year. We have about another 20 years to
get the
finish
whole
it.
thing.
Yeah.
And we've probably been at this for,
I think this is about 7, 8 years.
I was going to say 7, 8 years, something like that. So we're about a third done, maybe,
Yeah.
something like that. So
Do we have a life expectancy of how long this particular procedure will last?
Not that I can recall, but basically it's a resin. It's a resin that hardens, and it's an inert material.
So it should last?
Quite a long time, yes.
But it saves us having to dig up areas and put in new lines. I mean,
don't have to dig it
eventually, we're
up.
probably gonna have to do that, but that'll be another council's problem, but,
And then we don't have to then,
we'll
repave
get-
the streets.
We'll gain a
or-
lot of useful life by doing this.
Yeah.
Well, it's a great deal, too, that it blocks out some of that infiltration from
Mhm.
tree roots and other water getting in the system, and
Yes.
so,
Looks like a marvelous invention.
yeah.
I should have thought of it.
John's got a sample in his office if you
Yeah.
want to see it.
Stop by.
I'd so move. It's a great
Sec-
program.
Second?
Clerk will call the roll.
Valero.
Aye.
Star.
Aye.
Yeager.
Aye.
Friesman.
Aye.
Hammond.
Aye.
And Resolution 3-17 is approved. Consideration of Resolution 4-17, accepting the UV disinfection project. Discussion.
Well, Staub Construction Company, they were the general contractor for the UV disinfection project. They've completed the project in substantial compliance with the contract documents. If you remember the UV disinfection project, this was a second phase in an overall improvement project to the plant. Now wastewater flows will now be treated by ultraviolet light before it leaves the plant to kill E. coli bacteria, and this is a requirement of the MPDES permit that the city has. The project was completed at a total cost of $983,464, and this was about $38,000 less than the original bid price of $1,021,800. Staub Construction, they have provided the city with a 2-year maintenance bond that, if necessary, we'll have to utilize for any faulty workmanship and materials. So we would recommend approval of Resolution 4-17, accepting the UV disinfection project and authorizing final payment in the amount of $5,000 to Staub Construction.
Discussion or questions?
I know we're looking at some pretty major changes out there possibly in the future. Is this particular project going to remain viable when we do the other things we may be thinking about doing out there?
Yes, any improvements to the plant will incorporate the UV as it's currently constructed.
So this is something that can continue on and be useful, and
Yes.
so that's good.
Council will be getting an update from Fox Engineering here at a workshop in February on the wastewater treatment plant expansion project, and some of the initial numbers we're looking at is if you went out in a bare spot and start from scratch, going one method would be preferred, but since we have a lot of existing infrastructure, this included, it makes sense to go another way. So it really shows that we're going to be able to reutilize a lot of our existing structures, especially the ones that we've just expanded and built on. So
Good.
That's going to be a nice point there.
Dan, do you have any comments, or is it everything working the way it's supposed to?
I think Steve.
Okay.
And as part of this project, there was initially a Phase 3. And we're not having to do that as far as we are being told, correct?
That's correct. We're not having to do another phase.
It's great.
So move.
Second.
Clerk will call the roll.
Star.
Aye.
Yeager.
Aye.
Friesman.
Aye.
Hammond.
Aye.
Valero.
Aye.
Resolution 4-17 is approved. Consideration of Resolution 5-17, accepting the 2016 house demolition project. Discussion.
Yes, the demolition of the house at 1911 Clark Street that was completed late last year by Sergeant Trucking and Excavating. If you remember, there at 1911 Clark Street, that house had been identified as one of the nuisance properties in the city. Its dilapidated condition made it inhabitable, and the small lot did not conform to our current zoning requirements, making it an unbuildable lot. So the city did acquire that property to eliminate this condition on that prominent location on Clark Street. The demolition project was completed at a total cost of $11,504, and this was a little over the original bid price at $10,324. Once the house was completely demolished and the site cleared, it was evident that that more area needed to be regraded and reseeded to restore the property, and that's what increased the cost of the project. So we would recommend approval of Resolution 4-17, accepting the 2016 house demolition project and authorizing final payment.
Did you say 4 or 5?
5-7.
I'm sorry, 5, yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Second.
Clerk will call the roll.
Yeager.
Aye.
Friesman.
Aye.
Hammond.
Aye.
Malero.
Aye.
Star.
Just, if I could, do we have any thoughts or ideas what we're going to do with that newly acquired real estate?
Yes.
Do you mind sharing your thoughts with the rest of us?
Well, there's a couple different things, I guess. As John mentioned, and part of the emphasis on why we wanted to acquire, why would the city acquire that is it's not a buildable lot. The location, it's a high-profile location. It's unbuildable. It's directly next to the Charlie Western Trail, so there has been just some discussion. No council deliberation on this, but certainly discussion about maybe using that as some parking area for a trailhead. We don't have too much trailhead space, and that would seem to be a perfect location for that. So that's one option. We've also been talking with a group about doing an edible landscapes project somewhere along the Clark Street corridor, and so that location has been mentioned as a possibility. So something we need to discuss in the future. I mean, there's also Smith Street that goes through there, which is I think utilized on a fairly low amount. So that might be something we might want to look at vacating and utilizing that entire area there for a trailhead or something of that nature.
Good.
And
Smith Street is only 1 block long, isn't it?
Yeah.
Smith Street or Smith Avenue?
About a block. Yes.
Yeah.
That's
Half a block of dirt path.
Right.
Slaughter Street is huge. Really. Smith Street. Yeah,
Not so
it's
much.
a very short. It's unimproved. I think it's gravel.
Gravel, yeah.
Yeah, it's gravel. So.
It's far to a trail.
Resolution 5-17 is formally approved. Miscellaneous correspondence.
None, Your Honor.
City Attorney's report.
Yeah, just one thing, Your Honor. The other nuisance house that we have been working on, the 301 South Johnson, we did get a fully executed copy of that agreement back, so we're ready to forge ahead with that project.
Good.
City Clerk's report.
The next meeting will be January 23rd, which is Monday, at 4:30, and that will be a combination of planning session and a budget meeting.
Both. Okay. City Administrator's report.
Just a couple of things, real briefly. There's been some concerns today shared about there being water leak up by Simply Essentials, and just I want to let everybody know it's not a leak. It's actually Simply Essentials working on putting in their force main, and so that's their well pit area that they've had a lot of groundwater coming into. So they've been pumping the water out of that as they install the work. So there is no water leak on North Grand, just FYI. And then secondly, this Saturday is going to be the announcement party down in Des Moines for the RAGBRAI announcement to see what stops they might be doing this year along the way for RAGBRAI. The city did make application this year, as we've done in other years, to be a potential overnight stop. And so we're all very curious to know which cities are going to be selected. And so I know we're going to be sending down a small contingent of city officials, the mayor, the clerk, myself, Ginger Williams, and one other person, I think, are going to be down there. So we'll have city representation to see which communities are selected, find out if we are or if we aren't, and just enjoy the evening. So looking forward to that. Other than that, that's all I have.
So apparently the Globe Gazette has published the fact that there's rumors that a couple communities have already been selected. I personally don't appreciate rumors being published, and I'm not aware of our local paper doing that, so appreciate that.
Rumors are, I mean, we get asked if we know anything. We don't. We just know that if we do get selected, we want to be there to represent the city. So.
Board, commission, or committee reports.
Yes, the Hotel Motel Committee met last week. I believe we'll look at my date here. About a little over a week ago. We had 5 applications for projects come in. 4 of them were approved, and so we NRCC, there was, there was 4, and there was 3 approved, so.
Anything further with board, commission, and committee
Out of
reports?
the landfill, we have our audit report. Our meeting's been canceled twice because of the weather, otherwise we'd have it for you tonight, but we should have it for you at the next council meeting.
Okay.
The organizational meeting for the Southwest TIF Board also occurred recently.
Oh, that's right.
Councilman Yeager is the new chairman of that
You had to
committee.
remind me.
Hey, no, that's,
Successful campaign
that's good.
Yeah.
that Delane ran to get Jerry to be.
Anything further? Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved, Your Honor.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed? We're adjourned to that meeting, but we have another meeting right on its heels. The budget.
Yes.
Oh, really?
So we gotta go move tables, right?
Yep.
We are.
We gotta sit down where the food's at.
Yeah, you need to get down by the food.
Yes.
And then, so you and your...
Okay.
Primary sandwiches, that-
Primer, we wait until you
Ginger's
leave and
bringing
then
some
we
along
serve the
too, but I
primary
can't
sandwiches, right, Keith?
Yeah,
We
see ya.
always wait till Jerry leaves.
Somebody's also
Going downstairs.
During the
Yeah.
We're going to the
the
basement
bike
here.
expo.
Prime rib for everybody.
Yeah, well, yeah, they have, it's part of the bike expo. They have a bike
Oh, gosh.
expo during the day, and so
Yeah.
Ginger will be there
Rolled right through
promoting
that.
the,
We did.
and whatnot,
What
as
if you
part of that process.
called your group?
And then I think, then she's gonna sit.
We talked about that, but one way of doing that is to look.
If something happens, I can call you.